What's up, guys? Welcome back. Things adjusted here. Hope you all are doing okay today. Get started here. So last week we talked about my experiences and kind of introduced you to the show. This week will be a little different. So this one we're actually going to jump into how a 911 call works and what happens as soon as you call 911 and kind of how different agencies do it. I think I'm probably going to entertain y'all slightly more, and I may switch my screen here and do a little bit of 5M livery work while we do this. So let me get this set up correctly. Any questions y'all have when we get started, just throw them in the chat. We'll try and get to them as they come in and see how that works out. But I really hope y'all are doing all right today. Like I said, so this week we're going to go into from the very start, like as soon as you dial 911, and go from there. So every agency is going to be a little different. I know a lot of people, when I talked to them, thought that for the longest that 911 just had some big national office that all the 911 calls all over the United States got answered there. So it's not quite like that. Each agency, each area is going to have their own 911. Some places do have a big center for, like, say, like the whole county will have it. Some will have each PD, each ambulance service, they're all separate dispatches. So sometimes it works like that. For the one I work at, we take all of the 911 calls for the county and then we transfer it wherever it needs to be. So, like, let's say you need police for the county, that's a separate dispatch center we can send you to. And for the ambulance service, that's a separate dispatch center. But as far as the city police and all of the county firefighters, we handle that. So it's different for everybody, you know. But when you call 911, generally, I would say like almost 90% of our calls now are definitely from cell phones. Technology has gotten a lot better, so cell phones will ping off of whichever tower it is, and sometimes it can be really off because cell phones can be funky sometimes. But whatever tower you're hitting, generally it's going to hit that county's PSAP, which is a public safety answering point, or that's what it's called, a public safety answering point. And that's where all of your 911 calls for a specific area get routed to that PSAP, and then they do what they need to with it, whether they're the ones that handle everything or they have to transfer it out. So the agency I work at is the PSAP for our county. And I'm going to try and get these liveries open so that way we can work on some liveries and talk all at the same time. But whenever it hits a tower, it'll go to that PSAP, and the PSAP will do what they need to with it. Like I said, cell phones can be funky, so don't always assume that they can see your location or anything. It does show us a little pin where, is like the center of where you may be at, and it gives us a little radius. Usually it's accurate within 100 yards. But disconnected cell phones, caller ID blockers, things like that can really mess with the locations. And so it may show you in a completely different area that you're not even in. I've also weirdly enough, I've gotten a 911 call one time that for some reason it was hopping towers, and the caller was actually needing emergency services like 200 miles away, and it just happened to hit our tower in our county. And so we had to get all that figured out. Also, when you call 911, like I said, be aware it's your local area. So if you're having to call for a different location, or like say another state, another city, another county, something like that, you want to try and find the contact information for that particular county or wherever you're trying to call. It just makes it a little easier, because we also, you know, we don't have transfer buttons for a lot, you know, all over the US. Our transfer options are within our surrounding counties, so we can generally transfer to our surrounding counties. But as far as like if you're needing help a long way away, we don't have a transfer button for those locations. But we certainly try. We can manually transfer. So if you call and you need an agency like that, we can plug in the number, like we can Google it and plug in the number for you. And sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, when you call, it does generally show a location, somewhat accurate on a cell phone. Back in the day when landlines were still a thing, the landlines were super accurate because the landline was registered to a particular address. So if you called from that landline, we could see you're at 123 Cedar because that's where your landline is registered, and it'll automatically show your address, your name, you know, what street you're on and everything. So nowadays we really have to try and get that information. That's like top priority. Number one, where is your emergency? Because without knowing where, we can't really send you any help. So the where is the number one thing. And a lot of people, surprisingly, like I said, don't know that. A good resource is mail. Like if we're talking to kids or something that really don't know their address, we'll ask and see if they can find a piece of mail or something with the address on it. But I think for people, I think that's the number one thing I would like to see is people kind of teaching their kids their address and where they are if they need to call for help of any kind. Just because it doesn't seem like people really teach their kids that. Kids tend to be the most confused about their addresses. So I mean, our main thing is to get you help. So the address is going to be the thing that at least we can get you help of some type. If you know, if you can get us nothing else, like absolutely just can't, then we can at least get someone there to see what's going on. More than likely, a lot of times that's going to be police, because police are the first ones that make sure a scene's secure. Because if you don't know what's going on and you send an ambulance or a fire truck into a gunfight, it's not gonna go very well, right? Because they don't have anything to protect themselves or protect other people. So generally, if we don't know what's going on, our first option is going to be police, so that way they can secure the scene and let us know what's happening. So we also have text to 911. That is a thing in most places across the country now. It's supposed to be for situations where you can't call 911. So if you're in a dangerous situation, or you're like currently like in the middle of being assaulted or something, that's supposed to be what it's for. But most people don't use it that way. Most people use it just because they don't want to talk on the phone. Also, most of the time I usually get text to 911 when someone's driving and they want to report a reckless vehicle, which is wild to me because that's the exact thing we're trying to avoid. You know, you're sitting here texting and driving, reporting a reckless vehicle seems kind of counterintuitive. But yeah, text 911 is a thing. It is helpful in some situations. Also, we have a system for hearing impaired people. There's also resources for like all levels of hearing impaired, either deaf or just hearing impaired, or whatever the case may be. There's lots of resources for 911 where people with different types of needs can have access to 911. So we have a machine that's called a TDD-TTY machine. Basically, it's more or less texting, which I've noticed kind of has phased out. I've maybe gotten one or two TTY calls in my career where someone that's hearing impaired or deaf actually uses their machine to talk to 911. There's different types of machines. The one that we have that we test out every single day just to make sure it's all functioning correctly. People at their houses will usually have a regular phone, like a landline phone or something. It's a machine that you set the handset onto it and turn it on, and you can type out what you're trying to say. It's also kind of its own special language and stuff too. For us, when we have 4, 5, 6 computer screens. When we receive a 911 call, it's on our top 2 screens, and so we can actually use the TTY built into the computer to communicate. When we test it every morning, though, what it does is it takes that handset, and when they type something, it's almost like a dial-up tone type of thing. It takes whatever tones are created by the keys and translates that into letters and words, so forth. So that would be the old school way of doing it. Nowadays, like I said, since text to 911 is a thing, most people I've noticed use text to 911. So that's mainly what we're seeing in like our special communities and whatnot. Once we do get that 911 though, and we get a good location, our next question is going to be, well, what type of help do you need? Do you need fire, police, ambulance? So that way we can get you the proper help that you're needing. Some agencies, I know a lot of metro areas, a lot of larger population areas that have more resources will generally send one of each. Not every call, but a good majority of calls, they'll send one of each resource. That way they can make sure that the person's taken care of, and also situations don't escalate. Working on the ambulance, there have been situations where it's escalated and we've needed to call police out there because people just aren't happy with the care we're giving or something of that nature. So we're going to ask you what type of help you need. Once we get that, that's going to open up a whole new line of questions. So sometimes people ask why we ask so many questions, and the main reason behind that is we're trying to paint a picture for our responders of what they're walking into. So we want to let them know what to be prepared for. All right, guys, we're back. Sorry about that. Had to take care of something real quick. But we're back, and I believe where I was is kind of painting a picture for the responders that go to the scene. So what we're trying to do is paint a picture so they can be prepared for something. For instance, with police, sometimes we get calls of like suicidal subjects, and we want to know exactly what's going on. Let's say this person, their plan is to commit suicide by cop. I don't want to send them 6 cops when they're planning to commit suicide by cop. That's just providing them the means to continue what they're wanting to do. So what we do is we just try and get as clear of a picture as we can, so we know, the responders know what they're walking into. For the ambulance service, they can plan on what bags and drugs and things they need to get out of the ambulance to be able to take care of that issue. For a fire department perspective, they want to know how they're going to attack the fire, whether that's going to be offensively, defensively, which is, going inside or just spraying it from the outside. If they're going to have to deal with any kind of chemicals, if they're going to have to deal with traffic, if it's a vehicle fire or something. It's things that help the responders plan for what they need and helps them work a lot quicker and be more effective in what they're doing. So that's the main reason we ask so many questions. And I know people get annoyed with it, but we're just trying to get as much information as we can. Also, as far as police calls, let's say you're calling in a disturbance or a fight or something, we're going to ask you a lot of questions, like if there's weapons involved and everything, because we need to know if the officers need to be ready to encounter weapons or if they need to be ready to just talk to people and sort things out. We also try and gather descriptions of people on police calls That way we know the correct person we're looking for. So we try and be as specific as possible. Generally, we'll ask if the person's white, black, or Hispanic, and what we're mainly looking for is just like a skin tone. So that way, they can kind of pick out which person they're looking for, and then we try and get, shirt, pants, and maybe even if people give enough detail for like facial hair and all of that, that also helps. Tattoos are another really big identifier that's used in the police world. Whether it's on 911 calls or in criminal histories, things of that nature, identifiers that we can make sure that we have the correct person, whether it's a warrant or just a call for something that somebody witnessed. So we're going to have a lot of questions as to what's going on the scene to really narrow down things for the first responders and see if we need to change our approach and go for something different. As we get them on the way, usually whenever we get the address, especially on more higher priority calls, we're immediately going to get help that way. If I'm by myself, I'll ask the caller to hold on for just a second while I get the officers on the way, and I'll go ahead and send them over the radio and get back on the line with the caller to see if I can get more details. So if you think the questions slow people down or aren't important, we've already sent help, basically. We're just trying to get as much as we can to know kind of what's going on. So the questions don't slow them down, and 9 times out of 10 they're already on the way. As soon as we get the call and the address, they're already on the way. But yeah, as they're on the way, we'll continue to update them with details. Then once they get there, that's when they're gonna do their portion of it, and they'll occasionally contact us to let us know either what's going on or information that they need information that they need put into the call sheet for their report. So that's when they're running the DLs and doing all of that stuff. So that's going to be 911 calls in a nutshell. Every call is different. Every agency is also different. Some agencies, the person that answers the call is not the same person that's going to be dispatching it or talking to the units. Your huge agencies are going to have a separate person for each and every job. So there's going to be people that just answer 911 calls, and then they're going to have people that only answer admin calls. There's going to be people that only dispatch or type in the notes into the computer system. There's going to be people that only talk to the officers or fire department or ambulance on the radios. And generally in your huge agencies, all of those are going to be separate people as well. So you're going to have dispatchers for the ambulance service, for the fire service, and for the police radio, because there's so much going on and so much radio traffic that they have to have everything individual and separate to keep it all in a straight line and keep moving forward. Smaller agencies like the one I work at, a lot of times I'm even working by myself, so I mean you've got to do it a little bit of everything yourself and multitask and try and sort things out as you can. So if you're in a rural area, sometimes you may call and you may get put on hold. Just try and be patient with your operator, because a lot of times they're just trying to sort through calls, or they're getting a lot of calls about the same thing, but they're trying to sort out the calls to make sure they are all the same thing and make sure that they make sure that they're all the same thing and nothing different is happening or something more major is going on. And a lot of times there's different calls for things. People, it's amazing sometimes in 911, you'll have 50 people call about a loose animal on the road, But you could have a major wreck with everything on fire, and only one person is going to be the one to call. Y'all can't see her because she doesn't want to be on camera, but my wife is off screen here. I was going to try and get her to chat and see if she had questions and see if I'm forgetting anything to keep my head straight, because it's hard to talk for an hour straight sometimes, and sometimes you got to bounce things off of people. Am I forgetting anything? Do you have any question? No. So I have a question for you, and you're gonna have to talk loud so the microphone can hear you. Before you met me, what did you think 911 was? Like, what do you think happened when you called 911?
I never called 911.
You've never called 911 before me? Well, I mean, but I'm just saying, like, I was mentioning earlier how a lot of people think that it's like one huge 911 center for all of the United States. I mean, what did you think, or did you even think anything?
No, because I've never been in a situation like that.
Okay. Well, now you're in a career where you call 911 every once in a while, or you've been in situations where you've had to call 911. So, I mean, was it easier because you already knew me and you're already dating me? You kind of already knew what to do, or like, how did it go for you? I honestly think I've answered every 911 call you've made.
I mean, I think it was easier because I could talk to you and not somebody else.
Right. Another thing to mention with, like, people get annoyed with as many questions as 911 asks sometimes. That also goes back into every agency is different. Some agencies have different policies and things because of things that have happened in the past, or they have different legal things they have to take care of. So they have different policies as to what they have to do. Trying to say this without calling out a particular agency. There's one that in our area that people get particularly upset with, and I mean very upset with, because they ask some of the same things several times, but it's part of their policy to do so, and they're just trying to follow their policy and confirm information, because they've had instances in the past where, you know, maybe information's been wrong, or somebody's complained, or there's been a lawsuit or something of that nature, to where they have to adapt how they're doing things. And so sometimes that's just the case. It's just like sometimes retail policies are really dumb, right? But the retail people have to follow those policies. And kind of the same thing. I mean, every workplace is going to have policies that people aren't going to like or not going to agree with. It's just kind of the nature of how it is. Other agencies are also going to have different policies as far as what information they have to gather. I know the other day, I was telling my wife the other day, I had a caller that it was a fairly simple call. It was just a stranded vehicle that we needed to check on and make sure everybody was okay. But when I got to the point of, you know, asking, okay, what's your name? And, you know, trying to confirm the phone number, because we can see the phone number. And if we really wanted your name that bad, there's ways we could find it. But we just have to sometimes confirm information to make sure everything's accurate, everything's pulling up correctly. When I got to the point of asking their name and phone number, they were not happy. They let me know very quickly that that was not necessary, and that I was doing too much and all of this. I mean, reality is, it's just, we have to get that information sometimes. Let's see if we have anybody viewing at the moment. Also, for each type of call, you're going to have different questions. Of course, medical dispatch is going to be like medically centered questions. There's some things that people think aren't going to be very important to the call. but every portion of a call is going to be important. You may not think it's relevant to what's going on with the call, but there's usually specific reasons why we ask certain things. For instance, I was talking about like suicidal subject calls a second ago, and a lot of times there's questions that I'll ask that people don't think are relevant, but it honestly helps us out, and it helps the officers out when they get there. Like I said, of course, if it's someone that had a original plan of, say, suicide by cop, we don't want to send a whole bunch of cops charging in. But I also try and ask things like what might have triggered the event, or the types of things that they like, because also being trained as a negotiator, you want to try and connect with that person the best you can. So if we know what they like, we can maybe have conversations about that, or more especially if we know what triggered everything, we know to avoid that conversation as much as possible. We know to avoid the triggering things that may have caused things to go down the way they did. And these are things that we're going to ask on every call that's alike, because we take every call with the same type of seriousness. Which is another complaint that I've heard about dispatchers before, is just the fact that they seem cold. But same logic goes there, in the fact that we're just trying to do a particular job and make sure that we have the same type of reverence for each call, and getting accurate information for each call. And we've been through things enough at different points in time that I don't want to say we're callous to the calls, but we know the job that we have to do, and we just kind of go through it easily at that point. So it's almost like running on autopilot. Even if you have a lot of things going on at the same time, or things are a little hectic or confusing, a lot of times you can run on that autopilot, and you'll be asking your same questions and getting details, even when you don't feel like you're doing it properly. Just because, like I said, it's autopilot. You know the things you have to ask, the things you have to do, and it becomes second nature to do it. A lot of dispatchers, after a few years, also on particularly hard nights, we all have stories of answering phone calls in our sleep, or hearing phone calls when we're trying to go to bed. We're hearing the phone ring. Well, in reality, we're not hearing it. It's just kind of our head replaying things and trying to wind down after like a stressful shift. I think that's another thing that's downplayed even by the first responders, is that dispatchers do have a different type of stress than some. Having worked in the field and in dispatch, I always tell people, to me, dispatch is a little harder, because you're on a phone, and some of the things that people call about, I know how to deal with it. I know what I would need to do if I were there, but I can't do anything because I'm over a phone. And something about being on a phone sometimes makes you feel a little helpless almost. I know I've had people call in before that were suicidal, and the only thing they're looking out of the conversation is to talk to someone while, basically while they commit that act. I've had someone call before that that's basically all they wanted. They wanted to talk to me for a second. Next thing I know, I hear a gunshot, and you can kind of gather what happened from there. Don't want to be trying not to violate, Twitch's terms of service here by going into too many details. But you can imagine what happened there, and things like that. It does weigh heavy on dispatchers. Some of the things that dispatchers hear, even before the responders get there, sometimes the responders get there and the event that took place is already over. And with dispatchers, they have to hear the whole event, so it can really take a toll on you sometimes. I'm gonna call my wife out a little bit here. So when we first got together, she also had made mention one time of she had asked me why I was so stressed out, because basically I answer phones all day. I answer phones for 10 hours. What's stressful about that? Well, after she got into the emergency service, or what would you call your field? Like a public service field? Healthcare field. I would say it's in the first responder field, okay? But after getting into that field and kind of seeing things kind of from a different perspective, she's definitely never said that again. So, because it's all of your first responder fields can be very adrenaline based, or like up and down. There's lots of ups and downs. There's nights when it's 10 hours and it's dragging along and you're trying to find things to do, and you have time to complete your continuing education that you have to do, and you have time to work on side projects or whatever you need to do. And other times you're not catching a break. You don't even have time to eat. You can't get a snack. You can hardly go to the restroom. It's a very up and down field, and sometimes you have both in the same shift. Like you can have nothing but calls for a few hours, and then the next few hours is absolutely nothing happening. Not even any officers running traffic, so it's all different at all times. Wouldn't you say so? I mean, like sometimes you can be more tired from having a shift with nothing going on than if you constantly have something going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how to explain it. It sometimes makes you even more tired with nothing else going on.
With your mind.
Because what?
Nothing to do. Your mind has nothing to do.
Right. But I mean, why would that make you tired? If your mind has nothing to do, your mind's taking a rest.
It makes your brain sleep.
So it's definitely full of ups and downs. And I think the adrenaline, and I think also the most tiring is when it does go from a whole bunch of calls and a whole bunch of things going on to dead all on the same shift. I think that'll tire you out more, and it adds to the stress of things. I think it also wears on your body in a different way. Do you have anything that makes you mad about 911?
I would say like the common sense that people have, which is none.
Well, I'm not sure if y'all can hear my wife or not, but she said the one thing that makes her mad is people's common sense, and because people have none. That can be true a lot of times. So I joke with coworkers a lot in the fact that if people had common sense, we wouldn't have a job, and that's true. I mean, there's always going to be, like with officers and firefighters and ambulance service and all that, there's always going to be something that somebody needs help with. With, the officers, it's, if everybody had common sense and never fought or anything, we wouldn't really need officers, right? If people had common sense and didn't jump off of things they shouldn't, we probably wouldn't have to have as many ambulance services as we have. If people wouldn't light the wrong things on fire, we wouldn't have to have as many firefighters as we have. It's really is job security in a way. And that's just the nature of people. People are, and I'm sure everyone knows this, people are horrible in their own ways. It's just, and you're never going to get around that. But hey, job security, I still get paid for that. Anything else that makes you mad about it? I'm talking about like 911 in general. Like, are you, like, do the questions upset you? Do people's attitudes upset you sometimes?
I would say the unnecessary questions that EMS asks.
Well, yeah, but to them, it's also not unnecessary. So, okay, from my standpoint, when I used to dispatch for EMS, like, yes, there's a lot of questions to it. Once again, I'm trying not to call out, the company and the dispatch center here because, I don't want to have no legal trouble or nothing. But they do ask a lot of questions. They'll ask the address twice. They'll confirm the phone number twice. I think the issue with their questions is the fact that with medical dispatching, there's a book or it's a lot of times it's on the computer and it'll go through different questions to ask for different scenarios. For instance, a car wreck. If there's a car wreck, it'll ask every single time if someone was ejected. Well, when we were dispatching in EMS, we were able to use the common sense of, say someone calls in and says, hey, I was in a car crash, my neck's hurting a little bit. I had my seatbelt on and everything. We're out of the car. The police department just transferred me over here because, I said I was hurt. Okay, awesome. You can use common sense and say that no one was ejected from the vehicle. And that no one's trapped in the vehicle because they're like, yeah, we're already out walking around the car. But with EMS, their policy is they have to ask every single question. So they have to go through that full list of questions, even if they already know the answer or it doesn't make sense to ask that question anymore because the caller's already said something else. So theirs is a policy thing. And they'll get in trouble if they don't ask that.
So it's more AI than it is people.
Almost. I mean, but that's the Q&A thing for EMS for medical calls has always been a thing. Like even before AI has been taking over things. So it's not necessarily AI. It's just their policies and their questions that they have to ask. Yeah. Also another thing, I think what helped us also when we were doing medical dispatch, or when I was doing medical dispatch, is everyone in our agency there had to have an EMT certification or better. So like we'd already been through like the EMT paramedic school stuff. So we knew what we were looking for. So we were kind of like trying to picture it in our heads and we'd ask particular questions to what's going on. Whereas a lot of emergency medical dispatchers just have like the dispatching class. They don't have any medical experience per se. So that could also be a huge difference in that probably. I mean, besides EMS, I mean, I know you've mainly just talked to them.
Mm-hmm.
I've also seen you, okay, well, I've also seen you watching like some of the emergency calls on TikTok and stuff. Do any of those like make you feel a certain way?
I think their attitudes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I imagine, so like even beyond what I'm going to be talking about on the podcast, some of the things I've dealt with at work and whatnot. So, I mean, I imagine because no workplace is perfect. I mean, we can all agree that, and there's no perfect workplace, I don't think. But I mean, I think every dispatcher has to deal with some level of that, and then also the callers that will, curse at you for almost no reason because you're asking questions, and they just don't want to answer questions. You're just trying to do your job and paint a picture of the scene, and you got to deal with people like berating you and calling you names and cussing you out almost pretty much on a daily basis. I imagine you can have some burnout, but that's still no excuse for the way some people act. I'm also sure all of you have seen some of the TikTok videos and audio from calls. There's a pretty famous one that is actually used in just about every dispatcher training I've been to. It's been used as an example because it is so bad. So have you heard the one with the lady that's calling about her teenager acting up, her daughter acting up? If y'all haven't heard it, basically it's an audio recording of a 911 call. Lady calls 911 and she's saying, I just can't handle anymore. I can't do it. I need you to come get these kids. I can't handle it. You know, I can't take care of them. They're wild. They're being disrespectful, all of that. And the dispatcher is apparently having a terrible day. But he kind of sighs. He goes, so you want us to come shoot her? Apparently he was just having a very bad day. And that's something you should never let get to you. We try also where I work to, if we can see each other's we're getting frustrated with a particular call or a particular caller, we'll take over the call or ask to transfer the call to our station, so that way we can take care of it without them getting too amped up, because we don't want to become the next example of a bad 911 call or a bad dispatcher. But things like that happen a lot. I think people get burnt out and they get stressed out and they don't have enough help. Because I think pretty sure every call like that's been on like TikTok where, you know, people have really said the wrong things on 911 has been dispatchers that are working by themselves and getting multiple calls. So, I mean, I really do think that has a lot to do with it. That has a lot of you know, the burnout and kind of trying to work by yourself can really take a toll. And I think people just get burnt out and say the wrong thing at the wrong time. Do you think that's the case, or you think they're just bad people?
About the dispatcher?
Mm-hmm.
No, I think burnout is definitely like high in the workforce.
Yeah. Well, and I mean any first responder workforce, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because there gets to be more and more people, and more and more calls and emergencies, but not more workers, you know. And it just sometimes just seems like it's not gonna end or get better.
Well, and I think that mental health isn't one of those things that is talked about.
In a lot of places, yeah. I know Texas, you know, for those of you that don't know, we're in Texas. Texas doesn't focus on or do very well with mental health. It's not one of those things that they focus on, and not one of those things that they have a lot of resources for either, which is unfortunate. But I do wish, and I don't know how you fix that issue either, because I mean, we've already talked about how there's not, you know, there's more and more emergencies, more and more things to deal with, but not enough workers. I mean, it's the same for the healthcare field too. I mean, they don't have enough people to go around, and then how are you going to fill all the facilities if you don't have the people to fill them? You can't just keep making facilities and expecting people to show up. Yeah, you also have different levels of mental health too. You have like a first responder, or like a, I don't want to say palliative care, but things that aren't diagnosed, I guess you could say, like not your typical bipolar, schizophrenic, things like that. More of your PTSD and stress and outlets like that. I mean, there's a lot of online services now. I mean, every YouTuber, Twitch streamer you see is nowadays is sponsored by BetterHelp, which is like an online service you can use, like a video conferencing service. So I feel like there's some resources now that people can use, but it's also not well known. And then you have older people that just don't know about those services.
I just think that it's not talked about enough to anybody. Like, not even in schools, not in healthcare.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, what going through paramedic school or anything, or for you nursing school, what was the section on mental health was for the patients, right? Not for you. So, yeah, I think that could be explained better to people going into different careers. Is that, you know, they're going to have to deal with some traumatic stuff and how to deal with it, resources to go to, all of that. What do you think is some other areas that are lacking?
Education.
Okay.
Like, I think there needs to be more classes on like 911, fire, EMS, healthcare in general.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be more motivational to people to hear things and see things and how it works out. Like a kind of like an obstacle course, like they could see how firefighters put out a fire, or like a...
So basically, these services being more involved in the community, which, I mean, they used to be. I mean, there were like kid safe days we used to do here in the county, like here, you know. There used to be, the Boy Scouts used to do a thing called the Explorer program too. I think with liabilities, a lot of that has gone away just because everybody's too happy now. So it's like something somewhere has happened and then they got sued and they can't do it anymore. So I think that's taken away a lot of stuff. Also, that's also what's taken away from like a lot of first responder services too. Is I remember learning, I mean, even back when I went through school, learning about that and the fact that you can get sued, and if you're sued, you're kind of screwed, because like on the law and the way it reads in a lot of places is there's no way around it. And like, let's say you see a wreck in front of you, if you're certified and you stop, you can, and you have to pull someone out of a burning car, but they get injured when you pull them out of the car, they can sue you. But you can also get sued if you don't stop. So, I mean, you can get sued either way. But that's also why a lot of like first responders and nurses that we know don't put the stickers all over their vehicles saying that they're first responders or nurses or whatever, because they want to avoid that that issue. Any other issues that you have? No issues. Hopefully we answered a lot of your questions about how it goes when you first dial 911, and kind of why we ask so many questions, why we have to confirm the address when, you know, we can technically see where you are, just because it's not always accurate. Next week, Looks like we'll go into different jurisdictions and agencies. And we'll probably try and talk to another dispatcher next week and have them in with us to explain some different call types. So we're really going to get into actual different call types next week. And so let me know what kind of calls you actually want to see. Let me know if you're more interested in fire department calls, police calls, whatever you're interested in, we'll try and get to it. I think that'll be just about it for this week. We are coming right up on 56 minutes. So we're probably going to call it there. And I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you tune in next week. See you later.